Hey, everybody. Welcome to yet another riveting edition of the Cerebral Entertainment Podcast. I am James, and with me, as always, is my good friend Colt.
Yes, sir.
How you doing today, sir?
I'm good, dude. This feels weird.
Well,
6:15 on a Thursday night when we're recording.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Everything is weird right now. It's like, we don't do this.
Yeah.
You remember, we kind of used to. We used to just kind of be like, whenever we had a chance, and a lot of times it was evenings. It was in this very room where we started the podcast, where I'm at right now.
That's very true.
Things were different back then. It was much fuller in here. It was a lot more crowded, and there was a lot of crap in this room. It was my office, but it was also just a very crowded room of stuff.
There also used to be a lot more booze involved.
A lot of booze was involved. Yes.
The fact that 3 years later we're still doing it and we're actually talking about like a lot of serious topics is kind of mind blowing that we made it this far.
Yes. But I think it's important to note that I'm also sober now too, so that might
That's
be.
true.
Yeah. Of course, that's still a pretty recent event. Getting sober. It's been since November now, though. So.
Oh wow. You want to talk about that for a second? Like me, I don't think me and you have personally really talked about it. Like I remember you told me that you were going back on the sober train, and I remember asking you, like not trying to be an ass, but just being like, well, what's the reasoning behind you doing it? And you basically just named off like every aspect of your life that you think that it would be beneficial for you. And no disrespect at all. It's awesome. Something to talk about. I think it's an important topic. I think
it is. And
it's not like you had a problem or anything. But like the fact that you're giving up casual drinking means that either you think there was an issue or there wasn't, and you just think things that could be better without it.
Yeah, and I think both of those things are true. At the same time, they're, even casual drinking for me can still be problematic. I can still drink too much, and kind of like, I wasn't an everyday drinker by any stretch. I mostly just a weekend drinker for the most part, especially over the recent years. And even then, it wasn't all the time, at least for the most part, but sometimes it was all the time, every weekend, and when it does become habitual like that, and I have an extremist nature in that sense, in that when I do something, I go all out.
Yeah.
I hate to use that term extremist, because that's going to get me flagged on some kind of watch list or something. That's not what I mean. That's what I mean.
Well, you said every weekend. Like, was it through the week too, or just mainly the weekend?
The weekend. I would. There have been times in my life where I would drink through the week. I always wanted to be the kind of guy. I wanted it because I enjoy. This. I enjoyed the taste of beer. I enjoyed just drinking a beer. I enjoyed all the different kinds of beer, especially once we got into craft beers, man. It was like this explosion of beer, of goodness. And it was fun. It's fun to taste the different kinds, but the drunkenness, it always tends to catch up to me. The buzz, cascades into more of a buzz, and then I'm drunk. And it's just my nature, man. Whatever I'm drinking, it doesn't have to be anything. Just, aside from I don't really have an addictive personality, but when I do something, I just tend to go all out. If I'm drinking this thing full of water that I've got here, my big Bubba, I just guzzle it. It's just how I roll, and I'm just not a sipper of things. And so beers definitely was no exception. So one of the things, is that I would drink on a Friday night or a Saturday night, and sometimes both, but sometimes usually one or the other, and I would hit it pretty hard, and then the next day was just terrible, and so I'm not the type of guy. I love what I do for work. I have a passion for my career, and that's awesome. So I'm not one of those guys that's just working for the weekend, oh, thank God it's Friday. I love my weeks too. So it's cool like that. But I do have, the weekends are a time where I have I have the time off. I have it with my family. I have to do stuff around the house, and to just spend one day miserable, because the older I get, the worse the hangovers would get. It just wasn't good for me, anymore. And as much as I wanted to be that guy that could just drink a beer every now and again, it's not me. It's not me. And even though I don't have a quote unquote problem with it, it's still problematic in those ways. And And so health wise, I've noticed some differences in my health, and I go pretty hard in the gym too. Not, I'm no Arnold by any stretch, right? But when I go into the gym, I try to work my butt off, and living that kind of lifestyle where I'm drinking, that amount of alcohol, even if it's just 1 day per week, doesn't really mesh well, man. I think it was hurting me. I think it was hurting me physically. I think I've probably suffered from some injury to my body. And it's kind of hard to explain. It's almost intuitive, but then again, it could be, some of these tears that I've got and things like that. It's because I'm drinking alcohol and it's taking a toll on my body, and I'm not letting up in the gym. I'm still going as hard as I would if I weren't drinking the alcohol. So health wise, it was big for me. It was big. It's a step in the right direction for me not to drink anymore.
Yeah.
And it's, of course I'm going to miss the drinking of the craft beers. It's fun. It's I love the taste. I love the atmosphere. I love going out with, you and whoever else likes to drink beer. But it's not enough for me to continue in that lifestyle. And that's the physical part of it. Then there's the spiritual aspects too. It's hurting my spirit. I'm tending more to spiritual things in my life, and I'm putting a lot more effort into maintaining moral and a valuable lifestyle in a spiritual sense. And so alcohol it's a numbing thing. It lowers your inhibitions. It causes you to do things and say things and yada yada, and things we haven't talked about on the air, but there for a while my personal life fell apart. And coming out of that and realizing that some of that was not just because of alcohol per se, but just because my spirit was not in the right place. I was out of sync with myself, and things fell apart, and I wasn't guarding my heart anymore, and I wasn't guarding my values, my principles anymore. So I'm getting back on track with all of that, getting back to myself and getting back into church. It's something I don't talk about on the podcast either, but church is very important to me, and I'm gravitating back to where I come from. I was raised in church. I was born in church, and I'm proud to be back in church. And so I'm definitely not ashamed to admit that that's where my life is going as well. And I couldn't be happier that it's happening like that. So I don't know if you can tell, but I'm starting to be pieced back together. So
yeah. How long have you been friends for? Like when do we work together?
2010, I think.
That was 2010. So it's been 12 years. Wow. So,
Yeah.
I've seen, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 good, like James falls apart and then watch James put himself back together.
Uh-huh.
I've seen a few of these.
Yeah.
So, it's, I sometimes I think it can be a good thing, like you have to kind of fall apart to put yourself back together stronger, I guess. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about this, is that there is a value in hitting rock bottom, which, I'm not saying that, I haven't, when I say rock bottom, I'm not trying to compare it to other people's rock bottoms, because you can't. Rock bottom's different for everybody. And I've had much worse rock bottoms than, the more recent rock bottoms that I've had. You didn't know me when I was really hitting rock bottom there a couple of times, but for, just to hit those really low points, let's say that there's value in that for me, because I do have that extremist nature, that all or nothing nature. And until I get to a place where it really slaps me in the face and is like, man, James, wake up. You've got to change this. You've got to stop. You've got priorities kind of jacked up right now, especially now that, I've got kids. I've got a kid in junior high, middle school. I've got, a boy that's, coming into himself at 10 years old. I've got a career that, I've got to pay attention to, and all these things do add to the stress as well. But those are my priorities, and I have to make sure that I'm aligning myself with those priorities, and that other things aren't veering me off in a way that it gets me off track from those priorities, if that makes any sense. So,
right.
getting slapped in the face sometimes is good, because it makes me look at those things. I have to reassess my values and be like, okay, now what's really important to me here? What's the real value that I have in this life? And then sometimes you got to cut those other things away and let them go. And you shed some of that skin, you shed some of that extra weight that's on you. And it wouldn't have happened probably if you wouldn't have been slapped in the face like that. So at least that's me. My life it's a whirlwind sometimes.
I get it. As I said, I've been there a couple of times.
Right. So
that's good though, man. I'm glad to hear that things are being pieced back together.
Yeah. I am too. And I think it's good for all things involved. Even though there's some activities cut out of my life, like, drinking beer. Chances are I won't be getting up late with a hangover for the podcast one day. You've probably seen that a couple of times too.
Well, we've all been there.
True. That's true.
Yeah.
So yeah, my craziness though, amongst a lot of other craziness that's going on out there today, man, in the world.
Oh, really? I haven't heard about anything. What do you?
Well, let me get you up to date, man. Let me get you up to speed, because there's some crazy stuff going on.
I need to know. I need to know all of it. You've got about 20 minutes. Let's go.
That should be plenty of time. No, one of the things that you and I have some pretty deep discussions, and we like to have discussions on topics such as values, such as work ethic, such as motivation is a big one. And another one that I feel like you and I both really look for in a lot of different ways is respect. And what draws you to respect someone or something. It's like, so that would kind of, you got to project your own values onto something. And I think that's how we really start to respect something, or something shows you that there is a value that you maybe hadn't possessed before. And it's an enlightening moment, and it gives you some kind of respect in that way. How do you define respect just off the top of your head? Like, let's talk about in the sense of a person. What causes you to respect a person? What values do they have to possess?
I think several of the things you just said, like, motivating people, not me motivating people, but someone who is motivating.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough. I don't think I've really thought about like what I look for. I think, okay, let me ask you this. Are you somebody who, when you talked about like projecting yourself, do you project yourself onto other people? Like, do you look for things in other people that you accept about yourself or that you like about yourself?
Well, I try not to.
I try not to too, but I'm not good at it.
Okay.
So like work ethic. You mentioned work ethic a while ago. Mm-hmm. That's something that I've always taken pride in, and that's something that I also kind of project on other people, but I respect other people who I feel like are, you know what I'm saying, like are hard workers as well, or something like that. I mean, I guess just like being a good-hearted person in general is something to look at somebody at and respect. Mm-hmm. And then just somebody who has good values and good morals and things of that nature too. I think I like probably most people, I compare myself to other people, and I probably respect people who are more like I feel like I am.
Okay.
And I'm actually working personally on trying to find like people who are outside of that I'm looking at. I'm not sure if my words are making sense or not, but like in the past, I've had issues like having major respect for people who are outside of my morals and outside of my values and things like that. So I'm personally working on that now to really, I guess, accept other people for really who they are and what their values and morals are, and then trying to, I guess, dig into why their morals and values are where they are.
Yeah.
Because you don't really know, right?
And that's kind of what I was alluding to, is that I try not to, I guess, just go off of my own. I don't try to project myself on other people, and therefore I respect them, because I think that narrows things down, and it's kind of egotistical to think that my values are the only ones that are worth respect, you know?
Yeah.
So I think for me, in a big way, I learned to respect people, and some of those values do overlap. But of course, we're going to identify with some of those values, right? When I know how hard that I've worked to get somewhere, or to do something, to accomplish something, and then I see somebody that works hard when they're trying to accomplish something, I can connect to that. I can relate to that. So therefore, I have respect for that person, because I can identify with that hard work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Experientially, I know that what they're going through, because I too have been through it, and so it causes me to respect them. In another sense, though, I also respect people who I tend to. I respect people who far exceed any of the values that I have, like someone who works circles around me. And even though I can't necessarily identify with that, working to the level that they do, I respect that, because I can just imagine how difficult they must have worked. So that's just one example that I can think of. I tend to assign more value to people who have accomplished great things, and so they tend to earn my respect. But then again, I also respect people who go to great lengths to be helpful to people, right? Did they, like, say, a Mother Teresa type of figure, you know? You can definitely think about the kind of work that she did, and what she went through, how she lived her life, and assign respect to her based on the fact that, wow, that must have been really freaking hard. That must have just been very difficult to live in those types of conditions, but she did it because she was helping people, children, in a lot of the time. So assigning respect to those kind of people, I think, is also something that I just have to imagine. I use my imagination for, and then there is some respect of position, and that's where things get a little shaky. You're supposed to respect your authorities, but that gets a little shaky, because I tend to I question authority a lot of times, because I question their own values sometimes.
Well, and this, I'm sure you're talking about, like, starting from the bottom, like our personal authority. So say like our job, our boss, and that works all the way up to the leaders of the planet, right?
Sure. Yeah. Right. Police officers is
Yeah.
something, politicians, right? Whoever would be an authoritative figure. I'm not Catholic, but I could just imagine, if you are Catholic and the Pope is your authority, he's like the authority over the entire church. I would have a problem with that, because I question the Pope, so I question authority when it comes to certain kinds of positions. Now, my boss, I respect my boss, because I worked with my boss. I know my boss personally, right? But I've had some bosses who I didn't have respect for, because I didn't think they were good human beings, to be honest with you. I thought they were jerks too. So that just kind of depends as well. But I know I was raised. My father really drilled it into me to respect the position of authority, whether it be your principal at school or even your teacher at school. Which sometimes I had problems with, especially in high school. I butted heads with several of them. And then, your principal, your police officers, you just respect authority. That's just it. You respect the position regardless. And so I've had trouble with that, because I look at the person, and I think I'm more of an individualized assessor of that position, and whether or not that person deserves my respect. I don't know.
Just as far as respect goes, like you said, it was instilled in you to respect, any kind of, I guess, power above you, which was hard to do. Well, now it seems like everyone has gotten away from that also. Like, just respect your the authority above you is gone now. And I mean, part of cancel culture and things of that nature, we're looking at like people realizing I don't have to agree. Like, I don't have to respect our president. I don't have to respect, and the group mentality that comes out of that too, because it's not just me, it's a lot of other people. And now we get, we build this team together, and I don't know, it's gotten weird over the past few years.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with the spectacle that is the politics in general, but even, specifically the president of the United States. But if you ask some people, I mean, it could keep going back and back, at least to like the Nixon era. I said error, I meant era, but it wasn't error. I mean, both of those work. Yeah. With the Watergate scandal, a lot of people like, how could you do this as the president of the United States? How could you disrespect the office like that? And then we had a little bit of a lull there. I think most people were okay with Ford and Carter, and you had Reagan. But then here comes Bill Clinton, Bush Senior. But then here comes Bill Clinton, and Bill Clinton with the whole, debacle with him and Monica Lewinsky and the publicized, impeachment trial, whatever it was. And just his demeanor and the way that he just kind of floated around and la-di-da. There was a lot of what my father thought was complete disrespect for the office. Dad used to say that he made a mockery of the office because of that scandal. I'm not talking about his politics in particular, although, there were some complaints there too, but mostly just the way that he kind of brought some disrespect to that office. Then you had George Bush Jr., which a lot of people ended up disrespecting him because he was daddy's boy, and then because of the weapons of mass destruction line that ended up to be completely false. Then here comes Obama. I think both sides respected him, even though, the right vehemently disagreed with his politics. Here you go, Trump. Okay, this is where it all comes to fruition. It's not just okay to disrespect the position of president and the person himself when Trump came to office. It's expected. If you don't disrespect him, then you are lumped into one of the Trumpsters. And that can be a pretty bad thing. And it's carried over to Biden now too. The way that Biden fumbles around half the time, and he's losing his words, which, he's elderly, and it's kind of sad. You shouldn't make fun of the guy, but people kind of, they make fun of him and they disrespect him because it just seems like he's a little too old. At least, cognitively, his functioning isn't quite what it should be for a president. So he's kind of an easy target too.
Yeah. I mean, the Trump thing is weird. Like he built a culture of disrespect though, because he felt like he was being disrespected. So he just flipped the script around, like, the whole fake news and all that kind of stuff. Like he built that narrative.
Yeah, that's a great point. He brought disrespect to the office.
Yeah.
When he was making fun of the guy, one of the reporters that was disabled, and Trump was like, he did his thing. I mean, that's unprecedented. That's unprecedented for a president to do that. And I laughed. I don't laugh because he's making fun of a disabled person. That's not it. I laugh because he was just, I mean, who does that?
Right.
Especially if I don't know if he was president then or if he was still just running for office, but who does that when you've got that kind of visibility? And you shouldn't do that anyway. It was a disabled human being, and you shouldn't make fun of them, especially right to their face.
Right.
When the cameras are rolling. I mean, there's no way out of that. He just brought it.
Yeah.
He brought it, and he makes fun of it. He gave people nicknames that stuck, like what was it? Sleepy Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Crooked. Crooked somebody? Was it Crooked Hillary? I don't know, but he gave everybody nicknames and they stuck because they were pretty good nicknames. And so you're right though. He brought a whole new level of disrespect with him when he took office.
Yeah.
And I could spiderweb on that. I want to spend some time on that one of these days, on why he was elected though. People want to think that it's the fringe, and it was just it was a fluke or whatever. But man, there was I think a pretty strong reason why he ended up taking the presidency, even even in spite of all of the disrespect and the circus and chicanery that he brought with him. It was a referendum on no more like Hillary Clinton and no more of that, and there was a broad enough consensus for it to make it happen, and it should be a warning sign. But it's not. People, I mean, it doesn't look like it. At least people just say it as they just think it's a fluke. Anyway, I digress.
Well, I mean, we talked about this back then. Like, we definitely didn't want Hillary, but we also don't want business as usual. Like, we weren't sold on Trump, but we were willing to give him a shot.
Right.
Problem is, giving somebody a shot in a president seat means 4 years at least, unless they're impeached.
For the most powerful position in the planet.
Yeah. Sure, why not? Let's try it.
Well, I think we both backstepped out of that one. Slowly.
We deleted all of those episodes we were talking about that.
Actually, Squarespace did that, but if anybody wants them, I'll send them to you. Just shoot me an email.
Yeah.
But so, one topic that you and I had kind of alluded to as well, to kind of bring this, into the corral, is the thing with Joe Rogan. I thought it was going to go away. I talk with a buddy of mine over internet messenger a lot of times, and we go back and forth about different topics. He's like super. I don't want to call him liberal. He's got some very, very liberal ideas though, and mine aren't quite so liberal. I kind of I don't know. I'm probably left of center on a lot of things, and I'm right of center on some other things. But we were talking about the Joe Rogan whole debacle, with the way the piling on of Joe Rogan has been taking place, and I told him at one point in time, I was like, man, I hate to keep beating this dead horse. And this was a while ago. I mean, this was a couple of weeks ago, probably, because I thought that, I didn't want to be the guy that just sit there and beat the same dead horse over and over again. I was sure that something else would take its place by then. And that the subject would just go away, but it just kept persisting. It just kept going and going and going. And here we are still talking about Joe Rogan. So in the matter of respect, you've had artists, which for some reason it's all these ancient, older artists. Neil Young was the first one to step out, I believe, and probably the most prominent, although maybe Crosby, Stills and Nash did or stood behind him, something like that. But a lot of people are granting them respect for standing up for what they believe in and pulling their music off of a platform that it shares space with someone, Joe Rogan, who they feel like is disseminating misinformation by having guests on his show who have science that they, well, in my opinion, don't agree with, but they don't think that it's true. They think it's misinformation and they don't want it spread, so they're pulling their stuff off.
Right.
Some people are granting those people respect. Other people are granting Joe Rogan respect for doing what he does and for sticking to his guns and for having those folks on there knowing that you may get some backlash, even though I don't think anybody thought there was going to be as much backlash as what actually happened.
Right.
So what's your thoughts on the respect factor, as we'll call it, with the pulling off of art from different platforms based off of beliefs, belief systems and principle and things like that?
So first off, I've got my ups and downs with Joe Rogan. But I don't really like the fact that people are saying that Joe Rogan himself is spreading misinformation. That does not make sense to me. Does he have a platform that could potentially do that? Yes, but it's not him specifically doing it. Unless if he has a guest on his show and they tell him something, whether that's true or false, if he goes on to another episode and then he starts spreading what they said if it was false or if it was misinformation, then I'm looking at, okay, maybe he is spreading misinformation himself. However, I think he does well with towing the line between the two and having like one guest on, like say politics. He has one guy on from the left, one guy on from the right, talking a lot about the same kind of things, but getting ideas and thoughts from both sides. And I think he does that really well with everything that he does. And if you watch the video he put out a little while back after this whole thing started, he said he was going to try even harder to do that more, to make sure that he's got people on both sides of a topic, you know, telling their sides of things. But this whole thing came from like actual scientists that were on his show and people who were involved in the making of the COVID vaccine. And we're saying that what they're putting out there is misinformation. That seems crazy to me.
Well, to be clear, the Robert Malone, he wasn't involved in making the vaccine
or the mRNA, right?
Yeah, he was one of the engineers of the mRNA technology, as they call it.
Yeah. So, so as far as that goes, like I said, I don't think it's right to say that he is spreading misinformation himself. I think he has a platform that could potentially do that. Yes, but I think he really does well with towing the line in between the two. The whole Neil Young thing, you could explain it a little bit better as far as the conspiracy that I feel like should be a lot bigger than it actually is behind Neil Young pulling his stuff down. Neil Young sold half of his catalog. So I don't even know. So the other thing, the other question I have is like his music that's on Spotify. I wonder how much of his music that's on Spotify is he actually making money off of as far as streams go. And the reason why I say that is because I wonder how much he's benefiting from doing this, right? Or how much he's losing by pulling his music from Spotify. How much was Neil Young actually being streamed on the music that he actually owns? Because he only owns half of his catalog now, right?
Right.
On top of the fact that he sold it for a buttload of money, and it doesn't really need the money, I would assume. I don't know how he lives. I mean, I don't know what his lifestyle is like.
He doesn't look like he lives a lifestyle of luxury to me. The guy looks run down. He always has. But I digress. Go ahead.
I mean, I have respect for Neil Young. I just think this was a weird thing. I feel like he maybe thought there was going to be more of a domino effect and there was going to be a lot more artists. And I guess he felt like his name was big enough that he can take down Spotify or some, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And what, 4 or 5 other people pulled their music? Maybe.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I would like to get somebody to interview Neil Young now and get his opinion and see what he says. Because he's got to be aggravated, right? He's got to be aggravated that it wasn't near as big of I mean, it was a big deal. I mean, it's definitely been a big deal, but not big enough that like people are like, well, I'm still not gonna like not make money on Spotify for Neil Young. I mean, this is dumb.
Right. Has anyone ever interviewed him about this that you know of?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question.
Someone should if they haven't. I would think that they would have, but maybe he's declined.
See, that's another.
Sure someone's reached out.
That's another way. Like the whole we say it's maybe too much of a coincidence with this whole. And I'll let you explain it. The the guy that's part of Blackstone and all this. There's too much connection there for me.
Too much meaning what? Too much to be coincidence?
So if nobody's interviewed Neil Young, right, to talk about any of this is literally all that, everything just came from Neil Young saying, I'm going to pull my music now for Spotify because I think Joe Rogan is spreading misinformation. But there's been no interview for him really explaining himself or anything like that. It just feels like somebody put Neil Young up to doing this. And it's like, okay, I'm choosing Neil Young because he sold half his catalog for a umpteen bajillion dollars. He doesn't necessarily need the money from streaming on Spotify. So he has nothing to lose. but we want Joe Rogan off of Spotify because we feel like he is spreading misinformation. Let's use Neil Young to do this. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Like, it just feels like there's too much connection there. And then I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. As a matter of fact, you know, I'm not one to never say that, well, I don't believe in coincidence. Yeah, you know, sometimes I think there are coincidences, but this is a $100 million coincidence, you know?
Mm-hmm.
This is, so what happened was, at some point in time, there's this company called Blackstone. It's an investment company of some kind. I don't know a lot about it. I hear about some of it on some conspiracy theories, and have before this all ever happened, about them being into some dirty business. But go figure, it's $1 billion business. You know, there's no $1 billion businesses that aren't doing dirt to some degree or another.
Right.
At any rate, the former CEO, I want to say, and if you're out there listening and you can fact check me on this, then feel free to shoot me an email. Be happy to correct it. But the CEO, former CEO of Pfizer, don't have his name on top of on hand, is now the CEO of this investment company called Blackstone. Blackstone has I guess what you call a subsidiary company. It's Blackstone is a parent company of this record catalog. I think that's called Hypnosis Song Management, something like that. And they buy music catalogs, and some of these music catalogs are worth a lot of money. I was surprised that Neil Young's catalog was worth as much as what they paid for it. I wouldn't have thought so, but I'm not a Neil Young fan.
Yeah.
Disclaimer: I've never understood it. I never got why he was such a big thing. You know, some songs are catchy here and there, but I never thought he was like, you know, all of that. So apparently they paid for half of his catalog. They paid him $100 million. Mm-hmm. Coincidentally enough, now this is probably one of those coincidences I do believe in. It's the same amount of money that Joe Rogan was paid by Spotify to move all of his podcasts over to their platform. So that is the prerequisite that was uncovered later, that that Neil Young was actually his catalog was sold to this Hypnosis record company, song company.
Before we move on, I'm curious. I would like to see like what the return on investment on some of those catalogs are, because I guess like if they invest and they buy a catalog for $100 million, they're expecting that. I mean, they own that those songs now. So like anytime it's streamed or used on, you know, TV or whatever, like they're making the money off of that now. So I would imagine it takes quite a while to make the return, right?
I mean, I would imagine, but I don't know. They've got to be making money off of it, because otherwise they're not going to, I mean, they know what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to pay $100 million for a catalog they're not going to make buku bucks off of. So worldwide, you know, who knows? There might be, you know, like he might be huge in China. So you got 1 billion people over there streaming Neil Young, man. Blackstone's rolling. I don't know. But at any rate, you know, and disclaimer as well, I am a fan of the Joe Rogan podcast. And I've said this several times on our show already. I don't listen to every episode, because I don't listen to Joe Rogan for Joe Rogan. I listen to Joe Rogan for his guests. I listen. It's because I like the way he interviews them. That's true. I like to hear his talking with the people that I like to hear, but I don't listen to his show when they have comedians on there. And every great once in a while I will, but usually I don't. And he's got a lot of comedians on there. I don't listen to the fight companions. I just don't. I'm not enough interested in it for me to sit there and listen to it for 3 or 4 hours. I listen to a lot, and I've found people. That's where I found Sam Harris, and Sam Harris is my number one podcast that I listen to. It used to be Waking Up. Now it's Common Sense. I think. Isn't that right? Common Sense? I think so. But Sam Harris is the man. I love Sam Harris. Joe Rogan's where I found, oh man, I can't remember, a couple of authors, because they're like quantum physicists and astrophysicists type people.
Right.
And I've even bought books from these guys and try to act like I understand what I'm reading when I'm reading it. No, the reason why I did buy the books though, because these guys talk in very plain language. Like they're super smart, and their information is over my head. But kind of like Neil deGrasse Tyson, they have a way about explaining things that lets you feel like you can understand at least the basic, the gist of what they're telling you. So it's kind of cool. I found these people on Joe Rogan's podcast, and so that's the value that I get from it. So a little disclaimer there. But as far as the respect factor goes, I've said this. I said this to my buddy in one of our debates back and forth. If Spotify were to deplatform Joe Rogan from their platform, I would just follow him wherever else he went and listen to him there.
Yeah.
And not really cared. I don't care that Joe Rogan has 100 million listeners. I don't care about that. I like what I hear. And I get kind of angry when people are stopping me from being able to receive information. I don't like the whole anti-free speech thing. It gets on my nerves.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing too, that I've said previously. Rogan has money. Like before Spotify came along, Rogan was set for his life money wise, between Fear Factor and the UFC and stand-up touring and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know if when he got this $100 million from Spotify, he upped how he lives his life. If he lives in more luxury now, or if he needs that money to make sure that he can live the life that he wants. I don't know how that works, but he's always had the money. So my point is that if Spotify were to drop him, he would just go to his website, or he would just go back to YouTube or wherever and do this on his own. Right. And the thing that's kind of been funny for me to watch is that everything that he's done in his life, he's done kind of on his own, right? Like on his own terms. Now things are happening that he actually kind of has a boss through Spotify, and he has to get ahead of these things. Mm-hmm. Or where he doesn't make them mad because they gave him $100 million, So right. It's funny to watch him have to, when he makes these apologies. I don't know if we'll get into this or not, but this whole N-word thing situation that's blown up about him saying that word in the past and all this other stuff. Did you watch the video of that, of him?
Compilation?
No, the video of him apologizing for it.
Oh yeah. He was pretty hard on himself. It seemed like
he was, but it confused me because he did it in a way where he was also explaining more times that he did it. Yeah. And I felt like he wasn't helping himself in this situation at all. Yeah. How about we cut it? I'm like, man, you're a media guy. He's got it. Do you have a media guy? Because if you do, he's yelling at you right now.
He probably doesn't. He probably just says Jamie.
Right. Yeah. And that's my point too, is that he's always done things on his own. And now he's trying to apologize and get ahead of things in a way that he's never had to do before, because he's had a podcast for thousands of episodes where he's just said whatever in the heck he wants.
Right.
And the worst thing that's happened up until now is that when Spotify bought him, they took down a lot of the episodes that they didn't want. Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Apparently they didn't with the ones that said the N-word a lot. I don't know. Maybe they missed those.
I don't know. I'm not sure how the lady that put that compilation together. And that's another thing that gets on my nerves. I mean, let me start out by saying this. I was disappointed when that compilation came out. Just because I really hate that word. I really do.
I do too. I stay as far away from as possible.
Yeah, even in reference, I just don't say it. I just don't. I don't. And Sam Harris even explained it. I don't know if you ever listened to that little short podcast that I sent you of Sam Harris explaining Joe Rogan, the apology, but it's really good because Sam Harris was not happy with Joe Rogan's having those guests, Robert Malone and Peter McCullough, on his show, because Sam Harris is very much pro-vaccine. He's pro get out in front of this and trust the government in these matters. Right. Is what it is. That's Sam Harris. That's who he is. But he was very, very complimentary and very graceful with Joe Rogan about this. And even Sam says there, it's crazy that there's a word like that in the English language. that is so explosive. It is like a landmine that you do not want to step on, or else, you get your foot blown off, you get your head blown off. But and some people can say it and some people can't, and you got to know the rules. And if you break those rules, then you get piled on by the mob, and that is crazy. But I would still just rather stay away from that word. And every time Rogan used it, it was in reference to somebody else who was using it. But honestly, I mean, I just stay away from that word. Just don't use it. There's no need to. It doesn't prove anything as far as I'm concerned. Having said that, it was funny to me that this compilation just now came out. Go figure.
Right.
Why all of these instances, this compilation could have been put out probably 2 years ago, a year ago, something like that, right?
Right.
Because most of the instances where he said that word, they were probably all like earlier than 2 or 3 years ago. They were probably further back. Maybe there was a couple, more recently, but I don't think so. At any rate, that compilation is old. And so it was used just as another, just as more ammunition to pile on currently due to this whole Spotify thing,
Right.
It was just used as ammunition. And so therefore the act itself was disingenuous. Now that doesn't matter to some people, and that's okay. That's your opinion. Mine is that, I wish he wouldn't have said those words in the first place, or that word in the first place, because I don't like it. Right. But he has a right to say it, in my opinion, and not have to, but he also has to pay the consequences if he does say it in a public forum. A lot of people who may have been on the fence may not listen to him now, and that's the price that he has to pay. Right. But I don't know. It's just how it happened is what I don't have respect for, the way that happened, for sure.
Right. Well, I mean, and the people that are trying to paint the picture that he's a racist and stuff like that because he uses that word, I'm like, how many African-American people has he had on his show?
Yeah.
And do you know who Donnell Rawlings is? He's a comedian.
I know that name.
He was Ashy Larry in the Chappelle show.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Anyways, there was an episode where him and Dave Chappelle were both on Rogan's show, and then there was a still picture shot of those two and Rogan in the studio, and he had posted on Twitter, I think, and said, "This would not be possible if Joe Rogan was racist." Like basically saying he's got two black guys in the studio, chalking it up and having a great time. Like, he's as far from racist as it gets. That's dumb. And I think a lot of that in also the whole misinformation thing, I'd like to see, which you're never going to be able to see, but I'd like to see the percentage of people who have actually listened to one full episode of Rogan, who have chimed in on this whole thing, and not people who have seen clips and seen snippets of either him saying the N-word or of what they think is misinformation. I want to see like how many people actually were fans of Rogan, listened to Rogan religiously, and then now aren't because they really believe this stuff. Because if they did and they didn't take stuff out of context, I guarantee you they would be saying something different.
Yeah. And I love that you brought that up, because it's so true. And I was thinking the exact same thing. You can tell. I mean, I don't do it anymore because it's just too much. But there for a while, when everything was first brewing, I was, I wasn't engaging, but I was just tracking a lot of the social media comments sections. Oh, it's a dumpster fire, man. And you could just see it. The same thing kind of happened. This started, if you remember, back with the horse dewormer.
That's true.
All he said, he wasn't saying anything against vaccinations back then. It's just people were ready to pile up on him. And I told my buddy in one of our debates that it's because he's on top. When you're on top, you're a target. You got a big target on your back, son. And CNN he's got, I don't know how much more, 10 times more viewership than what they've got. Right. And we're talking about CNN's been around since I was a kid. Right. They were the cable news company. That was the channel. It was the only channel back then. It was groundbreaking, and they've always been like the epitome of cable news. And now he dwarfs he makes them look like nothing.
Yep.
And so they're jelly. they're totally jelly. And they're trying to take him down, and that's all that was. But people didn't see it for that, and that's what got me. I don't fault Joe Rogan for saying that he was on ivermectin. He took ivermectin when he got COVID, and it, because that was only one thing that he took amongst many things.
On top of the fact that I know we've talked about this before, but even that whole thing was blown out of proportion because they heard the word ivermectin and all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, he's taking stuff that horses take. There's a human consumption form of ivermectin. He's not stupid. Like I don't understand why people like the picture that people are trying to paint.
It's people who have no idea what they're talking about. That's what gets to me. That's what I'm getting too bad, because I don't even like fault CNN for trying to target him for being like on top, because it's business, man. It's a rat race. It's competitive.
Well, and it also gives them like more viewership probably because they're talking about Joe Rogan.
True. Yeah. So everybody listens to Joe Rogan instead of CNN. So now they're going to check out CNN because they're talking about Joe Rogan.
Right. Yep.
But I do fault them for especially for a major news organization. They sunk to the level of social media, of what do you call them? The rabble rousers, the trouble starters,
social justice warriors.
No, online, the guys who pick fights. Anyway, trolls. CNN was trolling. Okay. CNN was trolling Joe Rogan with this horse dewormer stuff. But CNN's supposedly a professional news organization, man, and that's when their whole outfit went into the toilet. But my biggest problem, this is my biggest problem out of all of this, is the amount of people that jumped on that bandwagon. I was tracking social media, dude, and it was everywhere. Now, granted, I liked the memes. We talked about this too. The memes were hilarious. Joe Rogan transforming slowly into a horse, like it was like shot by shot, and each shot he was more of a horse than before. Fantastic. I can't get enough of that. But the fact that people were taking it seriously, people they literally thought that he was taking a horse deworming medication that was unfit for human consumption, and that he was a terrible influence because now all these people are going to. What these people don't even realize is that ivermectin, the topic of ivermectin has been around since COVID first began. They just didn't know about it. I've heard about it because I listen to a lot of different wide varieties of shows and different viewpoints, things like that. At any rate, that's really what got to me, was that whole point. Here's something I want to bring up though, because I don't want to put myself up there like this stuff never happens to me, because it does. Okay. We've got to be careful about the bandwagons. We got to be careful about either selectively or haphazardly coming across information and running with it. You know where I'm going with this, right? Yeah. Because when we were talking about what we're going to talk about today on this podcast, I said, well, let's talk about how Neil Young, put his stuff back on Spotify. That would be fun to talk about. And then you text me back a little later. You're like, are you sure that actually happened? Because you went to fact check, and I hadn't, and I told you, like, nope, I'm not sure. Because when you asked me that, I was like, you know what? I didn't research that. I remember seeing a couple of posts. I saw a couple of different social media posts where that was the case. Yeah. And my mind took it and ran with it.
Which I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't like do a crap load of research. I literally just typed in, did Neil Young put his music back on Spotify? And the first thing that popped up was like, absolutely not. This is completely false. And like went through this whole thing about like the only music that's left on there was like soundtrack stuff that his music was on and stuff like that. And then I just looked at a few other articles, and pretty much all of them said that that it was false, that he didn't put his stuff back on there. So
okay, well, check this out. Here's what I did. Okay. after you had said that, and I was like, no. So I thought, we better think of something else to talk about today. But I went and checked myself, right? I did the same thing. I think I even got on Google this time, which I don't use Google a whole lot anymore. I use other sources, but I saw a variety of things. I saw some that said, yes, he quietly, which is what the social media post said. Of
course.
How Neil Young quietly put his music back on Spotify. And then I saw posts like what you said. There's, he did not do that. That's a social media hoax or blah, blah. And I kept seeing conflicting articles, posts about what he did. So you know what I did? I went to Spotify and I searched for Neil Young.
And you didn't find anything?
The stuff like you mentioned, he's got like just a couple of things. You could tell it was just like maybe a what do you call it, compilation album or something, maybe a soundtrack, something like that. There's a couple of hits on there, but like Neil Young, I'm sure he's got a catalog. Well, it's, apparently worth over $100 million.
Hey, now
So,
I just thought about something, and I hadn't thought about this before. So he only owns half of his catalog. Is that other half of his catalog on Spotify? Like none of his music's on Spotify, right?
no,
But he doesn't. So like I guess the group that bought the other half of his catalog was involved in this also.
I
Like
think
they
it
wanted
had
that
to
music
been.
pulled down too, because now they're not making any money off the streams either.
Think about it though. If he only owns half of his catalog, how is he going to pull down his entire catalog from Spotify?
That's my point.
But you already, it's also your point. I'm just going to reiterate here that they had to have collaborated with him to do that.
True. Okay. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that until now.
And hence the coincidence again. This former Pfizer CEO, you follow the money, and this is kind of to bring it full circle to some degree. When it comes to the respect of these things, I really don't. I really, let's be honest. Joe Rogan went to Spotify because they paid him $100 million.
Yeah.
He is not my hero. And he never was. He's never going to be. He does a great show, and I in some respects, I think we've taken some pointers from him just by the way he does things, and we've kind of to some degree, not a whole lot, but we try to model ourselves a little bit after him and his quality and the way that he holds long form conversations, things like that. I know I speak for myself. I really liked that, and I still do. And I just really admire that part of what he does. But he's not a role model to me. When he went to Spotify, it was known. I don't know about well known. I knew about it. I know a lot of other people did too. There's a site where you can go that shows where all of the episodes that Spotify took out of his library. You and I talked about how they took all of his stuff off of YouTube, I believe, right? You and I talked about something like that, how they took control over everything. So in a way, he gave up his sovereignty to Spotify.
Yeah.
Why? Because of $100 million. He got paid,
Right.
Do I fault him for that? No, but that's not really why I respect someone, because they made a whole bunch of money. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't respect someone like Neil Young either. And I think that's what maybe he could care less. I can't speak for him. I don't know what he's thinking. Maybe he's really just standing up for what he believes in. But out of all the things that you want to stand up to believe in something, you choose this hill with Joe Rogan on Spotify, when there's all kinds of stuff going on out in the world where you could put your foot down and say, well, I'm not going to be a part of this. I'm not going to be a part of that. And I've heard some examples. I can't remember them off the top of my head, where other hills where Neil Young could have chose to take his stand, but he chose this one. And I've got to wonder why in the first place. But Neil Young was also paid $100 million to sell half of his catalog.
Right.
He made a buttload of money. Do I fault him for that? No. But do I have respect for the man? Zero. I have zero for him. I mean, I don't know the guy, but I don't like his music. I'm not a fan. I'm nothing against him, but I don't mean to disrespect him either. When I say I have zero respect for him, I got nothing for him. It's nothing personal. He's got nothing for me either. So we're equal. But out of all these big players, these big moves, if they're really thinking that, and I'm sure you and Patrick probably have talked about this. I don't know. I didn't catch the last episode after the Super Bowl of Raised on the Radio, but Eminem kneeling, that whole thing during his part in the halftime show of the Super Bowl. Did you guys talk about that?
Well, so we haven't had an episode since Super Bowl yet.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, okay.
That was last Sunday. No, we haven't. And I actually forgot about it, but I did want to bring it up with you on that topic. Yeah, I haven't researched it enough. I've seen little things here and there about like clickbaity stuff where it says like Dr. Dre's opinion on Eminem kneeling. And before the show, or before the Super Bowl happened, I think he had made the comment about wanting to kneel for the national anthem or something, or something along those lines. But I'll tell you what, did you watch the halftime show at all?
No,
You
no,
haven't seen it?
no, I haven't.
Okay, so Eminem rose up to the top of this platform as like basically like a house that was set up. And then he just did Lose Yourself. And at the end, he knelt, but I didn't even think anything of it. Like I even knew that there was possible controversy about this, but maybe I don't know if people are looking too far into it or if Eminem has made a statement about it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I didn't even think about it because the way it looked to me, when he was done with his part, the next person's part started. So he just like kneeled. It looked to me like it was part of the whole presentation.
Yeah, like the choreography.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, I don't know if Eminem has made a statement about it. He may have, and he may have said, yes, I absolutely was kneeling for a reason and this, that, and the other. I don't know. But either way, man, I'm a fan of Eminem. But the whole kneeling thing doesn't really bother me.
Yeah, no, me neither.
I guess, I think the whole Colin Kaepernick thing where this whole thing started was blown way out of proportion. Never should have gotten as big as it was, but we know how people are, and we know how social media is now, and it's only getting worse. And it's a shame that, I mean, social media has a lot of good things, but it's got a lot of downfalls as well. And it's a shame that social media is becoming everything. Like we're talking about Trump, we're talking about Joe Rogan, we're talking about all these people who are getting attacked from behind keyboards.
Right.
And
that's right.
And it's insane. And it's reaching millions and millions and millions of people. We've never had that. 20 years ago, we didn't have that option. 10 years ago, we didn't really have that option. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's grown into the beast that it is today, just over the past, 5 years, maybe. It hasn't been very long. I mean, I do remember chat rooms when I first got the internet that could be a cesspool, but it wasn't nothing like what social media is now, because social media is so prolific. I mean, it's not, you don't have to be on social media. You can choose not to be.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because I actually know some people who don't touch it. They've never had a social media account, not even once. And I can respect that. Talking about respect, I got respect for someone who chooses to do that, because it's difficult, man. It's a pipeline to society. And if you have a business or a podcast or anything that you're trying to do to get out there, it's kind of like free advertisement, whereas before you'd have to take out an ad in a paper, a magazine, a TV commercial. Who could ever afford that? But a radio commercial, something along those lines. And nowadays you get to put your stuff out there pretty much for free, and you try to grow your social media scope, the amount of friends that you have, the amount of connections that you have, so that you can reach more people with this advertisement to get your stuff out there.
Right.
So it has a lot of utility, and at the same time, it's a vortex of cess.
It's cess a word. Like, I've heard the word cesspool before. I've never heard cess by itself. Is that a thing?
Dude,
like,
I was asking myself that same question as I was saying it. I was like, is that the thing? That it's just flowing out of my mouth, so I rolled with it. I think cess is a word. If not, I mean, it works. You knew exactly what I was talking about. But it is in the vortex. Yeah, I've got dear friends. I've got some good ones who cannot help but get sucked into that vortex. Now me, I'm a voyeur of sorts. I scan or I track some of these comment sections on some of these hot topics, these hot button topics, and sometimes even these particular what do you call them, like the groups or whatever, where I know that there's going to be, and because it's incited, I'll pick on one site, for instance, Vice. Vice has a public a social media account, and a lot of the times their articles in there are just clickbaity. It's just meant to stir up an argument, and I get that. And I have trouble with understanding how everybody else doesn't get it either. Or even more complex, that they do get it, and yet they can't help themselves but go in there and make the comments.
Right.
Even the comments that say, you all are stupid, don't you understand that they just want you to get in here and argue? And then I'm sitting there thinking to myself, but you just added to the comment section. You just did that. That's all they need. They don't care what your views are. They just want, they get ad revenue from how many comments, how much engagement they get. It also increases their reach on the algorithm. So there's a science behind this madness. I don't know how to do it. You and I have talked about it. I can't do it myself, but I can kind of visualize how the real big players are doing it, and kind of see how they're, why they do what they do. Otherwise they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't spend the time to do it. But it's a vortex of cess, my friend.
It's weird too.
Not help it.
It's weird too. Like I've even seen, I follow, like on Facebook, I follow several local St. Louis news channels on Facebook, right? And I've seen them just post random stuff. Like I'm pretty sure I've seen Joe Rogan type stuff on there. Like, do you saying like, do you agree with this or not, or whatever? And all that is just to provide arguments in the comment section, right?
Yeah.
When I see that, I read it and I just keep scrolling. See, I don't have the power, like the energy to look through comment sections and try to read people arguing with each other. It just doesn't fit into my life. And I know it's not going to benefit me at all. It can be funny at times if it's the exact right conversation for me to think about at the time. That's fine. But I'm never going to get like my own personal opinion off of watching people fight back and forth about things. It's just not going to happen.
Absolutely.
If you want to give me if I can get both sides, like clearly saying exactly why it's good or why it's bad, then maybe I can actually, I can take something from that and form my own opinion off of it. But that's not going to happen in the comment section on Facebook.
No. It gets brutal, dude. It gets personal. Yeah. It gets stupid. People, the social media outlets have finally figured out how to make privacy settings, because there's still ways around it, but they're even starting to find those, or they're starting to close those gaps as well. Because what people do is, someone will comment in the comment section, then go to that person's profile and pick out, like, those look at family pictures and things like that, or if they got misspellings, in some of their posts, whatever. And so they'll start using that to attack the person on the original comment section of that post.
God.
Yeah, and it's fantastic though. I mean, for what it is, it's a cesspool. Don't get me wrong. I don't like. The fantastic part for me is the links that people will go to in order to have these arguments.
But you know what though is
the creativity that's involved.
I actually fault the original person, not the person that's going and looking at the other person's profile, but I fault the person who puts a bunch of personal stuff on their Facebook page, like photos of their kids and pictures of their vacation and all this other like personal stuff. If you're going to go into comment sections and you're going to leave your profile on public to where people can go in and see your stuff, you're opening yourself up to it, and you did it on your own.
Right. I know, you're a glutton for punishment.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right. And I don't condone that stuff. I kid, I joke about it, but it is, I do look at it sometimes. Now I'm like you. There's no benefit I'm going to get from that. I'm not going to shape my opinion based off of anything in the comment section, because it is in fact just a dumpster fire. But it does give me a sense to the degree that it can. And who knows whether I'm actually accurate on this or not. I feel like I am though, because I've seen some trending happen based off of the comment section on some things like the Joe Rogan pile on. I go to different sites, different social media, like a Huff Post versus something that's more pro Joe Rogan. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. What was that?
No, that was cool noise.
Okay. Anyway, it was, I go to both of those things and kind of compare to see what the trending is. and you can kind of see like I saw the pylon coming. Like I saw the pylon of Joe Rogan like building. It was this beast that kept feeding on itself, and you could see it happening. It generated this momentum on social media, and it was crazy. And I just, when I thought it had crested, it kept building and building. I was like, my goodness, like these people really have it out for Joe Rogan. And that was before the whole N-word compilation came out. And when that came out, I was like, oh my goodness, here we go again. This is still building. That's why I look at the comment section sometimes, to just kind of get a feel for just how bad social media is in the comment section and some of these things. And it really has enlightened me over the past year or two more than ever how everyone is so manipulated by social media. Like I've seen, I don't know, have you ever seen the movie The Social Dilemma? It's on Netflix. You gotta watch it. It's you've seen it. It's great. That guy was on the Joe Rogan podcast. Actually, that's how I found it.
Okay.
But the Social Dilemma, the warnings are all there. They tell you the science, the behavioral psychology behind these social media sites. Like it's not on accident that they get your attention. They're doing it on purpose, and they know what they're doing. And we're feeding into it, unless you're like me and you, and we're like, no, thank you. Of course, you more than me, because you won't even look at the comment section. I don't make comments. I only scan.
Well, the big thing is too, is that we both know a time before this, right? We know a time before social media was a thing. I mean, look at our kids. Our kids aren't going to know a time without it, right?
Right. Yeah.
What are things going to look like in the next 30 years? You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
It could be a dumpster fire.
But it's going to be, I mean, unless I don't know what can change it, you know, and it's going to get even worse when you've got the metaverse, if that actually takes shape and your social outlets are in the metaverse. Your advertisements are in the metaverse. And so once again, you're compelled, because I have a feeling that if it wasn't for like the podcast, and if it wasn't for like, you know, some things like that, or keeping in touch with family or ex-coworkers, things like that. But if it was just the social aspect of things, I have a feeling that you and I wouldn't even be on it. You know, I'm pretty confident that I wouldn't be on it nearly like to the degree that I am without the podcast. And you know, because over the past 4 years, you know, you track a lot of people, especially past guests and potential future guests, things like that. So it's a way to kind of network and get in touch with people. But if it wasn't for that, but just imagine if that's the metaverse next, and we're compelled to get in there and live in the metaverse to some degree because we want to promote things, and it's our networking outlet. And you know, it's going to get even worse, because it's going to be more submersive. Is that the right term? Submersive?
I think so.
Immersive? I don't know, something like that. But we're going to be locked in, man. And who knows? On that note, and we got to close this thing down. But on that note, have you seen the article? Have you read the article or heard about the woman who was sexually assaulted in the metaverse?
No, this is new.
Yeah. It's a
so
thing, man.
You look so
I mean, this thing hasn't even gotten off the ground yet, brother. And look, I'm not trying to minimize anyone's traumatic experience. I'm not. I wasn't there. I don't know. But we're talking about, okay, a virtual groping of a female by, I think, one or maybe a couple of males on the metaverse. So this is virtual reality here, right? This is not like there was nothing physical that actually happened. They could have been in two separate countries. And yet this lady has been traumatized by this act, that happened on the metaverse. Now, look, I think a big part of my just disillusion with this circumstance, this is just the beginning. Like, where does this isn't going to end well. Where does this go?
I kind of liken it to like cyberbullying, right? You know, that's kind of the same sort of thing. Like you immerse yourself in it and you get an emotion, like a bad feeling from it, or like you get upset from it, or, you know, the same concept, like you're choosing to get upset from it.
No, I feel you. I do. And cyberbullying is a real thing.
No,
you know?
don't get me wrong. 100%. I just mean that, like, with cyberbullying, like nothing is physically happening. I'm not saying that it can't, like, potentially be that way. And just like with what you're saying, the sexual harassment thing,
Right.
they could be in separate countries. They could be in one town over. I don't know. I don't know how that works. And that could potentially become something worse than just just something in the metaverse. But that is, I don't know. That's a slippery slope.